Hello and welcome to Culture Vibes, the Federal's special program in which we talk to writers and artists about their work. I'm joined today by a very special guest, Ruchi Ghanashyam, who was India's High Commissioner to Ghana, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. She retired in 2020 and she has come out with a beautiful book on her years in Islamabad when she was India's first woman diplomat in Islamabad, in fact, between the year 1997 to 2020. Welcome, Ruchi ji, to this show. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you so much, Navedji, for calling me. I'm very happy to be in your program.
So, this is the book's cover, and I want to begin with you. Of course, recount those years. Your stay in Islamabad was also, I think, the most tumultuous period in the history of the bilateral relations between India and Pakistan. And I wanted to understand from you. Uh, some of the episodes that you mentioned that's very harrowing in the beginning of the chapter when you talk about being tailed by the Pakistan intelligence agency, that's ISI, and this intrusion of privacy in a lot many ways. And I was wondering that do you see things have changed now because it has been a lot of water has flown under the bridge?
I uh, I haven't been to Pakistan ever since I left in the year 2000, but I suppose it wouldn't have changed very much. I
Mhm.
don't think that they would have stopped tailing people.
Right.
I suspect that practice continues. It was initially actually, though now with passage of time,
Yeah.
I don't think so much about it, but it was actually something that one can't really get used to
Hmm.
have someone following you all the time, someone listening to your, and we would be talking to each other about how they heard disturbance on the line when they were talking to someone. uh, we suspected that the homes were bugged. How much of that was true, I don't know. But the people who came home to serve, because we would have to invite outside staff to come and serve in the dinners that we hosted. And on one occasion, we heard that the mic had slipped out of his shirt cuff.
Yeah.
So
And then Dubai.
everywhere
Hmm.
it was like every thing, one's life was in the public domain,
Hmm.
and that's not something that you can get used to. And when we returned from Pakistan, actually I think it happens to almost everyone who comes back, who used to come back from their posting, that
Hmm.
it takes you some time before you realize that now nobody is telling you,
Hmm.
that now
Hmm.
you are out, you're a free person, and no longer being surveilled. So it was difficult, but at the same time, as I have tried to bring out in the book also, that they weren't all the time, it wasn't all the time an unhappy experience.
Yeah.
Because for instance, once we lost our way, and the people who were tailing us, I think they got exasperated, going round and round in circles in
Yeah.
Lahore. And they just drove up to us and they asked my husband ki jana kahan hai aapko, so
Hmm.
then they guided us to the place that we wanted to go. On another occasion, I remember, and that was also in Lahore, we didn't know the way from where we were staying to the highway. And
Yeah.
my husband, I may have asked them, or I don't know how it happened, but they came forward. They said, we will escort you to the highway. And
Yes.
they drove ahead and we followed them. And when we reached the point where their jurisdiction ended, then they told us that this is where our jurisdiction ends, and so now from here you can go to Islamabad. So
Right.
at times, they were not always, I mean, their behavior was not offensive as such, except on some occasions. But
Hmm.
yeah, still, the fact of being surveilled all the time was very, it's
Must
a
have been very
difficult thing
troubling.
to, yeah. yeah,
But you also write that it was something that was also sort of offset by the kind of friendships that you formed
yes,
while there.
yes,
Would
yes.
you like to talk a little bit about those friendships and those people to people
Oh,
based?
we made so many friends despite all this. I and I really appreciate my friends because though they were also well-to-do people, so I suppose they had they were well connected as well in the system. But still,
Hmm.
it was something for them to boldly befriend Indian diplomats, knowing fully well that the eye of the agencies were on us,
Yeah.
whether it was their intelligence bureau or ISI. I still don't know who used to tell us. Uh,
Yes.
there were several friends actually, and I have tried to talk about them, though I have changed their names because it's important to keep people's privacy. And friendships were not just with people who were like in you can say our counterparts or people belonging to the same strata of the society. I mean, my the fondest memories I have is that of my tailor, and who was so I used to call him Master Ji. I didn't know his name,
Mhm.
and I mean, it was just a relationship of me giving my clothes to him and he would do the job for me. But it was at the end, like somehow there was a bond. And he made sure that he got me a khan of what he thought was the best fabric for making dupattas.
Mm.
Or for instance, when I was in Delhi, he sent me a packet through our High Commissioner's wife, who was also uh, somehow known to him. Maybe he was making her clothes as well.
Right.
But he gave her a packet of one salwar suit that he had made. He bought the fabric himself. He used the measurements that he had with him, and he sent the gift through her.
Right.
And the next day, then he called. He made a trunk call from Islamabad.
Mm.
And then he told me that he had sent this and he wanted to know if I liked it, if it fitted properly. And so generously he said, Kuch bhi chahiye. If you need anything, you just let me know and I will get it from here and I'll send it for you. I mean,
Mhm.
it's something that doesn't really happen in every place. And
Yeah. Yeah.
like that, there were so many friends. I had a friend who took me, for instance, to the naval colony.
Mm, mm,
And
mm. You're right
it
about that.
was, yeah. And I mean, it was a risk that she took because she told me, okay, we'll go in my car. So I thought,
Mm.
okay, maybe why to take two cars? So we'll just go by her car.
Yeah.
And when we started entering the naval colony, then I was really scared for her because, I mean, for myself as well, but more for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
And I asked her, I said, what are you doing? And but it was she said, no, no, there's this really nice stock of uh,
Chicken.
s- chicken curry work which has come to their shops. And
Mm.
so we went and I mean, the kind of risk people took in Lahore, we had friends, so many friends who
Right.
introduced us to all the, nice food like takatak and all the, so it was their I think uh, it was their introduction, that through them that we got to Pakistan, that we found so many different things to enjoy. If we
Right.
were left to our own selves being followed by people, and if we had no friends, maybe we wouldn't even have enjoyed the posting.
Right. Ruchiji,
Yeah,
one thing that you mentioned also somewhere, I think, in the book that, of a woman walking up to you, perhaps a Pakistani woman who may have some
that's
kind of
right.
connection with India, and telling you
Yeah,
that, I've never seen a Hindu before. And
yeah,
that brings me to a question about, the treatment of minorities. And we are sort of discussing this also in the wake of what has happened in Bangladesh, for instance. There's been a lot of concern on the part of
yeah,
India that how Bangladesh is going to treat its minorities. And I wanted to
yeah.
understand that, this. While you were there, what sense did you get that of Pakistan's treatment of its minorities?
Well, I think the minorities are not very secure in
Mm.
Pakistan.
mm,
At the end of the street where we lived, there was a neighborhood which was basically consisting of the poor people. And when you see Islamabad, you think everything is very nice, all nice houses and garden surrounding the house, and all nice, green outside and all that. But what you don't see are these poorer quarters, because
mm,
they have a boundary wall from beyond which these houses are located. So most of the people, I mean, the lady who, for instance, who swept the street
mhm,
in front of our house, she was a Christian. And on one occasion, for instance, there was someone, I won't say where he worked, but we met someone in a very like safe and secure place
mhm,
where he was working, and we were visiting. And then
mm,
he mentioned about how difficult it was for him and his family as Christians to be living in Pakistan.
right.
The Hindus also, if they came to the High Commission, they would always feel afraid. Though in Karachi, things were, I found that there were people whom we met. There were also some, you know, I think occasions on which we came across few of them. But
Right.
generally, I felt that Hindus, Christians, and
Mhm,
even Sikh, though there was a Sikh MLA in NWFP,
right.
but even Sikhs, I think they felt not that secure or
Mm.
that welcomed or loved as citizens.
Would you say that it's largely to do because Pakistan by and large continues to be an Islamic state where there is a lot of mistrust when it comes to other communities in the sense that if we look back at its history and how it was created.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I think that would be a fair assessment,
Mhm.
that because of the history, because of how the Pakistani state was created, uh, but I think it is also something to do with the way the constitution, for instance, Ahmadis being non-Muslims,
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, so there is some responsibility which the state may also have to bear.
Right.
Uh, that, but what you said, I think that is a fair assessment.
Right. One
Yeah.
bit about Rawalpindi that you have. Now you mentioned that of course it's Pakistan's fourth largest city and considered to be the twin city of Islamabad in some sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you write that the true power has always sort of rested with this Rawalpindi because it perhaps because it is a city that is also the headquarters of the Pakistan Army.
Yes.
Would
Yes.
you
The Pakistan.
right?
Yes, that's true. I mean, I think it is not a secret. It's been written about by, I mean, many people before
Right.
I have written this book.
Mhm.
That in its years of independence, I mean, the army has really been the power, either directly or indirectly. So the
Right.
civilians really hold the power. When they hold the power, they have to be looking over their shoulder,
Mm.
because the real power uh, resides with the uniform people, not with the civilians so much. So
Mm.
that's very true.
Right. Two of these, in fact, three of these flashpoints that during your stay between 1997 to 2000, and you have specific chapters on all of them. And let me begin with the nuke tests, and we'll come to the Kargil war and the hijacking of IC 814 later. But
Mm.
if you could give us a sense of the kind of course, you have written about it, you have an entire chapter on
Yes,
that. But how
yes,
would you ascribe this whole real politic around this, Pakistan getting sort of being so, by its fundamentalist forces that, that there was a, you write that there was a lot of pressure on the government, on Nawaz
yes,
Sharif, it had to
yes,
conduct its own
yes,
tests and,
yes,
kind of, an answer to an India in some way. So the way it was
yes.
sort of feeling, that was also problematic in your view, is it?
It was a difficult time for Pakistan. Economically, they had not been doing well for the last almost 10 years. And so it was a hard choice for them to make. Uh, but there was a lot of pressure, and some of which I have been able to glean from different through my research while writing the book. That
Right.
some of which I have tried to reflect in the book as well. There was
Hmm.
a lot of pressure, but when we were there also, we felt we would get feedback that at so and so event, I wouldn't
Right.
name the people, but that person even known to us, for instance, a Pakistani person, eminent person, walked up to him and begged him to do the to conduct the nuclear test. So there was a lot of pressure, and I think there is one reaction that I have given, which reflects the reaction of the man on the street, because
Yes.
my friend's gardener, and he was a
Hmm.
normal, average citizen of Pakistan, and the day Pakistan did its
Hmm.
6 nuclear tests, he very
Right.
triumphantly told her, actually, "Madam, हमने 6 फोड़ दिए हैं." So,
Yeah.
to emphasize that we have done one better than you. So
Hmm.
that, I think, shows how this was. I mean, it was so close to this people's sentiment, and of course, following
Hmm.
the nuclear tests, Pakistan's economy really faced
Hmm.
grave consequences. The foreign currency accounts were frozen, and
Yes.
their exchange rate fell, the stock market fell, the GDP growth rate fell. They had difficulty in getting, because there were sanctions, so they couldn't get the. So it was perhaps a difficult choice, most difficult choice that the Prime Minister of Pakistan had to make.
But do
Uh,
you see it, right? But do you see it
yeah,
as also as a failure of the the Pakistan leadership in some sense? Because you quote Zulfikar Ali Bhutto saying in the 70s that
yes.
Pakistan will do it even if it had to eat
Yes,
grass or
eat
walk away.
eat grass. Yes, this is one of his famous statements. And
Yeah,
if you just type the statement and Google, you'll find multiple sources where he has been quoted
yeah,
on this. So it does show the sentiment that strong sentiment that prevails in Pakistan, or it prevailed at least
right.
in this regard. And failure of leadership, I would say this is not the only place where you see the failure of leadership. uh,
Yeah,
the,
what I believe.
the, there is multiple areas where you can see where the Pakistani leadership
Hmm.
uh, has been found, can be found wanting on many places, many
Right.
occasions.
But would you
Yeah.
say that the India-Pakistan relations, in some sense, hit a new low after the new tests?
It was difficult. There was an attack. There was an assault on one of our diplomats. I mean, a random assault. He
Hmm.
just came out of his house to go for a walk, and a neighbor's, one of the neighboring houses, the guard assaulted him, and he suffered many injuries. And in fact, though
Hmm.
this was on the street, but even we felt it. We had a dinner that we had organized at home, and there were no Pakistanis invited for that, and it was
Right.
long before it had been scheduled. But like last minute, people started to regret that they couldn't come, and one person even asked us, "Are you still going ahead with the dinner?"
Hmm.
And of course, I was quite furious that people, diplomats should react like that. So
Right.
I just told the person that yes, we are going ahead with the dinner. And in my mind, I thought that if nobody comes, we will go ahead and have the dinner by ourselves, but we will
Right.
not cancel the dinner.
Mhm. Would
So there
you
was a deterioration. You're right.
hmm. Would you how would you describe this the US in this whole episode, the US and the North Korea hand? I mean, it has been written about and discussed about, but
Yes,
you
yes.
also talk about these two elements
So
in your chapter on that. Yeah.
yes. So the US, of course, from what I have been able to make out, and of course we heard about it even when we were there, the
Hmm.
US tried to pressurize Pakistan not to test, and they said it won't be business as usual. And thereafter, when Clinton was making a visit to the subcontinent, there was this big debate whether Clinton should go to Pakistan or not. And
Hmm.
I think I have quoted a news report from the New York Times or one of the U.S. Newspapers, where they described the tussle between those who supported
Hmm.
a visit and those who felt that he should not go. And eventually he did go, but he went for a few hours.
Hmm.
Whereas in India, so it was Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, but Pakistan was only a few hours. Whereas India, Clinton visit in India is one of the very
Hmm.
well known and popular visit where he went to Rajasthan and so many interesting. I think
Yeah.
one of the hotels in Delhi was even selling the restaurant was had a Clinton platter,
Okay.
and so what Clinton ate, and so everything. It was a big hit. The
Right.
visit of President Clinton to India, but to
Hmm.
Pakistan was a short visit, and I have written about that as well. Now,
Yes.
North Korea is, the Pakistani missiles.
Hmm.
Uh, and there are multiple the sources that I have quoted, which
Yeah.
would give they clearly point to the direction of North Korea, that
Right.
the missiles which Pakistan used were actually originally the Nodong missiles
Right.
from North Korea. So
Hmm.
that is there.
Right, and then this chapter on the the LOC hitting up this entire conflict in Kargil, and
Yes.
you also focus on its aftermath. Do you see it also as some kind of a failure of India's intelligence in some sense, that we had no clue what was going to happen, and on such a scale that on the scale that it happened actually?
I think the answer is to be found in the Kargil Review Committee's report.
Right.
So that's why I have not even touched upon it. But
Mhm.
just to what I have tried to do is to just contrast
Yeah.
between what was happening in India. A Kargil Review Committee was set up so that such lapses do not occur in the future, and what was happening in Pakistan, because the blame game started in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And how much Nawaz Sharif knew, or whether he knew or he didn't know, whether it was only Musharraf and his few generals who knew, so all that, and it
Mhm.
was slowly building up towards what happened in October thereafter.
Right. And the coup that happened, that was also a kind of a build-up only, because the circumstances led to,
Yes.
there came a point that it became sort of inevitable for General Musharraf to take over.
I don't know what is inevitable about the coup, because we live in India. We have had many occasions where it may have seemed like the government is not,
Hmm.
where the army may even have had reasons to find it not so, to be not so happy with what was happening. But we've never had a coup, so I
Yeah.
don't think that there is ever any justification for
So
somebody
on the
to.
ground, you couldn't sense anything what was going on. That
No, we
that
could
wasn't.
sense.
Okay.
We could, because in fact, and that's one of the things that I have written is
Yes.
that we were so
Hmm.
followed so much, but even we could hear the rumblings from the ground.
Yeah.
So the other people would have been hearing it much more. They would have. I mean, I
Hmm.
think it was just like a question of when and not if it
Yeah.
would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, ma'am, you have two chapters on IC 814 hijacking. If you could talk a little bit about that again was some kind of a blow to the relations between the two countries.
Yes, it was in the sense that our plane, the IC-814 Indian Airlines aircraft, was hijacked with several passengers on board, and
Right.
eventually it went to different places, including Amritsar and Lahore and Dubai, and then landed in Kandahar.
Hmm.
And Kandahar at that time, India had no relations with Afghanistan because Taliban was
Hmm.
in power in Afghanistan at the time, and so we did not recognize Taliban or Kandahar or the Taliban regime at that time.
Hmm.
Now, when the plane was hijacked to Kandahar. There was no way of knowing how the Indian team or Indian diplomats would be received by that regime, because we had no relations. There was no embassy, there was no consulate, and there was no interaction with that country at that time, with that regime at that time.
Right.
So it was because of all these factors that the government decided to send Ghanshyam. We were relatively junior officers. Both we were both counselors at the time, and
Hmm.
so it was Ghanshyam's job to go to Kandahar, uh, assess
Yes.
the situation, and give a feedback. And it was after his feedback was received that the team from India was sent. And thereafter, of course, the plane with the passengers and all the Indian team, they all flew back on 31st of December. But Ghanshyam had to stay back because one of our aircrafts and which had been hijacked, and the team that was going to the Indian Airlines team which had to fly the plane back, they were
Mhm.
still in Kandahar. And that night, Ghanshyam was told, received the instructions from then External Affairs Minister,
Right.
just one thing, that they should not go back to the guest house. They should
Hmm.
stay at the airport itself.
Hmm.
And so that night they had some, which I have, which he has written about. I have not written about that chapter. He has written. He has described
Yes.
the,
Yes. Of course, voice.
uh, yes. So it is his voice. My chapter is somewhat limited in nature because I was in Islamabad, and so basically for me it was that my husband had to go. My and we were both. He was in Kandahar. I was mostly at office, and our children were at home. We had actually we never gave it a thought. Neither of us gave it a thought to see how they were doing. And
Right.
it is only when my our younger son wrote an article
Hmm.
uh, that I realized that actually they were going through their own struggle as well. Fortunately for us, our older son told our younger son not to worry, and he said nothing will happen to dad. And
Hmm.
that's how he was reassured, and they were reassured, and they never expressed any worries to us.
Right.
But I was most of the time in the office, so the children were. So that's those are the kind of things that I have tried to bring about
Hmm.
in the chapter that I have written.
What was the process of writing this memoir? Of course, it's totally based on the experiences, your experience in Islamabad, but in some way also looks at the geopolitical, because
Yes,
a diplomat, you have that kind of perspective that sort of enriches
yes,
the book in that sense. So if you could
yes.
talk a little bit about that.
So, from the time that my husband and I served in Islamabad, we both of us have been asked this question almost by every person who came to know that we had lived in Islamabad,
Yeah.
because everybody would ask, "What was it like? What was your experience like?" Now,
Hmm.
it's not really possible to describe that experience in one or two sentences.
Right.
So we would, once one or two incidents we would talk about, and there are so many incidents that some of them I haven't even written in the book because I didn't even remember them. I remembered them after the book was written. But in any case, it was not supposed to become an encyclopedia of our experiences, just to
Hmm.
give a flavor. So
Yeah.
Ghanshyam also always gets asked about the story of hijacking. And
Hmm.
again, for him, it's very hard to just like, casual conversation just to give a
Yeah.
reply about it. So
It was
it
really
was.
traumatic thing
Yes,
to sort of.
it should have been, but neither
Hmm.
of us was traumatized.
Okay.
So, in fact, that's what I think I have written in the book,
You've written that.
because even I was not scared, and
Hmm.
he, of course, was not scared.
Hmm.
Perhaps I've given a reason about why I was not scared, but
Hmm.
because I had faith in the Afghan, traditions and culture of
Yeah.
respecting guests. But I suppose one of my approaches has the approach that I have followed or the philosophy that I have followed is कि जब
Yeah.
ओखली में सिर दे दिया तो मूसलों से क्या डरना. So now
Mhm.
you have jumped into the fray. Whatever
Yeah.
comes, you have to take it. So
Yeah.
being scared is not going to help anybody or anyone, least of all myself. But in any case, I
Right.
think also that we were so busy that we had no time to feel scared
Yeah.
or to think about it. So
Exactly.
I feel more for my children in that regard, that they had the time, but they
Mhm.
had neither parent at home to reassure them.
Right.
So that was, that was how it was. That
The book, of course, ends at the year 2000, and you have a final chapter in which you sort of analyze your sort of attempt to understand Pakistan. Can we
yes.
ever, as an Indian diplomat, can an Indian diplomat ever truly understand Pakistan and what is its motives are? Or is it something that will always be surrounded by a lot of ambiguities?
I think there are many ambiguities in Pakistan,
Hmm.
and though I have made an attempt, and I hope that they sound logical and cogent. Uh,
Hmm.
but Pakistan is an extremely, especially for Indian diplomats,
Right.
extremely opaque place. Of course, their newspapers are, they have good newspapers in Pakistan. Even at that time, when like the Dawn, for instance, is a very excellent newspaper, but also Urdu newspapers are good. Though I don't personally read Urdu, but we used to have translations available. So if we wanted to read, if somebody read, because understanding the language is not a problem, it's only reading the language that is a challenge. So there are good sources of in books, in newspapers, in magazines, that one can try to read, and then few people that you may be able to talk to,
Hmm.
because there is this intelligence agencies are like a wall between us and the people of Pakistan, and it really restricts the interaction that you can have with the local people.
Right.
It was so difficult at one time that they stopped sending their press releases to us.
Okay.
And I remember taking it up with them that we are not getting the press release. I mean, all that it says is so and so has been appointed. So even that, we had to send someone to their office,
Hmm.
the whatever, I think PIB's office it was called, but we would
Right.
have to send someone to pick up the press release from that place because
Hmm.
they had stopped sending us. So it is an extremely opaque place. Everything that you understand, you're trying to infer from multiple, it's like trying to solve a puzzle. You have
Yeah.
a puzzle in front, I mean, you multiple pieces of a puzzle in front of you. You don't know
Hmm.
what the picture is. You try to put those pieces together. You find there are some pieces missing, but on the basis of what you have done, you can see, oh, this is a
Hmm.
deer in a forest or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
it's something like that.
What do you make of the recent developments in Pakistan? I mean, of course, there's a lot of on the ground. There tends to be a lot of frustration, a lot of with regard to jobs insecurities, employment,
Yes,
inflation, etc., etc.
yes.
And what sense do you make of the recent years that have passed in Pakistan?
It looks extremely difficult.
Mhm.
Their economy is not doing well. The debt that they have is going on increasing. It's like you borrow to consume. When even in an individual's life, if it's like completely living beyond your means, and who is going to take them out of that morass?
Yeah.
The ability of the value of its location is not the same as it used to be a few decades ago or few years ago even,
Mhm.
because there is no oil pipeline coming from Central Asia to the Arabian Sea. There
Mhm.
is no American forces or NATO forces in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, sorry, not Pakistan. So they are not there. So the currently, at least, the value of its location has really gone down.
Mhm.
Uh, Economic challenges the globe over are, growing.
Hmm.
China's economy is also facing its own challenges, though of course they remain a very rich country, but their economy is also facing challenges. So with all of this, and then there is a governance deficit. When
Yeah.
and on top of that, you have this army which is so powerful over, kind of its shadow is perpetually there on the civilian government, making it very difficult for them to undertake the most fundamental reforms that the country needs. So, how will Pakistan manage to emerge out of this? Having
Right.
said this, I have to say that it has looked very difficult for Pakistan even 20 years ago. So it
Hmm.
has been in one challenging position or another for because last year, for instance, they went to the IMF for assistance, and it was the 23rd time. So it's not as if this is for the first time that Pakistan is in trouble. It's been in trouble for a long time, but each time it is mounting. And how long can a country go on this kind of a path? That
Right.
is a question that they have to ask. I mean, more than, but for us, it's important as well because it's our immediate neighbor. And what happens in your immediate neighbor's house is very important for you.
Hmm.
So I mean, I remember writing a chapter on Africa for a book some years, I think, couple of years back. And the first thing that I have written in that is that a property agency in London, in UK,
Hmm.
their advertisement about buying a property, what should be the three criteria, important criteria, how when you choose your property, and the three criteria are location, location, location.
Right.
So when we look at India's location, we have a really challenging location, and
Hmm.
so it's not as if this is not we have not to worry about
You're
it.
saying that Pakistan has lost the advantage of its location. Is that in the global south and
At
globally?
least at least for now, its location is less important as
Hmm.
compared to what it used to be
Okay.
a few years ago, and before that also a few decades ago.
Right.
So that much, because you see, at one stage, one point of time, there was this plan that Central Asian oil will be, pipeline would be built, and from Central Asia, the pipeline will traverse through Afghanistan and then parts of Pakistan, and so now that's not really happening.
Hmm.
And again, US forces have gone, NATO has withdrawn, Taliban is back in Afghanistan.
Right.
US attention is more in on different geopolitical issues globally. There are
Yeah.
two wars that are currently going on. So the world is focused elsewhere. So Pakistan's locational advantage is no longer what it used to be.
Right. And do you also
Whether
see it being diplomatically sort of sidelined in the sense or isolated?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I think more and more people, countries are impatient because, the base, some of the things that I have written
Yes.
uh, in the Understanding Pakistan chapter, they are taken from sources which are Western sources, not Indian sources.
Yeah.
Because my attempt was to try and find if I were to write it myself,
Hmm.
somebody would say that I am biased because I am Indian.
Hmm.
But it's not Indian, not even Indian sources. Most of
Right.
those sources are either Pakistani sources or Western sources. And so what you're saying is true. Diplomatically, Pakistan is facing a more challenging time
Right.
than before. But again, it remains a nuclear weapon. It's a nuclear power. They have
Hmm.
nuclear weapons, and nobody can ignore that factor.
Right.
Because if Pakistan deteriorates or if
Hmm.
there is chaos, it is a very, very dangerous situation.
Right. Now, when it comes to India-Pakistan relations, Ruchi ji, do you see, a possibility of a thaw anytime in the future, or do you see it further worsening and nosediving?
Well, India, as I as I feel India has done, taken many steps from time to time. For instance, I have written about the Lahore visit of Prime Minister Vajpayee. I mean, that was a major attempt from the Indian side for a prime minister belonging to a country that believes in the concept of Akhand Bharat, to go actually go to Minare Pakistan and to express India's goodwill. In his speech, also he in the governor's house in Lahore, he very eloquently put across those ideas.
Mm,
Then Prime Minister Modi tried as well. He invited Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and nice that he came as well.
mm.
And then he went to Lahore in December. Made a
Yeah.
stopover while he was coming back to India. So with all that from India's side, I think repeatedly we have emphasized that we want friendship with Pakistan, and we have made efforts to demonstrate that as well.
Right.
To use the a very common English phrase, we have walked the talk
Yeah.
in terms of building good relations with Pakistan. But in
Right.
return, we have not received friendship. In return, we have been stabbed by Pakistan
Mm,
on more than one occasion.
mm,
And
mm,
even when these initiatives are on, like in the case of the Lahore visit, there was major demonstrations by Jamaat-e-Islami
mm,
in Lahore. So when you look at all this, uh, I mean, the obvious question is, how can these relations be improved? Because it seems no longer in India's hands. It
mm,
is, to me, it seems obvious that Pakistan has to make that choice, has to come to the conclusion that it is in its own interest as well to have good relations with India, and that realization has to come in more than one segment of the Pakistani polity, the
right.
power structure. More than one segment of that power structure has to realize the importance of having uh, at least normal ties with India. And
Right.
I'm sure in my heart and in my mind, though I have no longer any links with the government, so I have no basis to say with any kind of authority, but I'm sure that the day genuinely Pakistan makes the effort, India would not be the one to be found wanting.